Hey guys, I'm going to do a video real quick. This one in regards to the UFC fight night this weekend. So let's get into it. We have Eric Anders against Kyle Daukaus. Anders has lost his last two fights to Jun Young Park and Andre Muniz. He also recently lost a grappling match to Andre Petroski. He's 6-7 inside of the UFC with 3 knockouts and 3 decisions. He's pretty well-rounded, has a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, but he may want to stay on the feet in this fight. Because Daukaus has a lot of jiu-jitsu experience, he's got 9 total submissions on his professional record, 6 of those subs coming by a Darce choke. His nickname is literally the Darce Knight. However, he's 2-3 inside of the UFC. Lost his last fight to Roman Dolidze, who we'll cover here in a minute. But 2 fights ago, he got another Darce choke over Jamie Pickett. And for this fight, I'm going to go with Kyle Daukaus. He's younger and just seems to have more experience on the ground, while Eric Anders is very well-rounded. I think Daukaus is going to have the ground advantage, so I'm taking Daukaus in this one. Now Jack Hermansson against Roman Dolidze. Jack Hermansson is 10-5 inside of the UFC. He beat Chris Curtis in his last fight. He's 3-3 in his last 6 fights. Within those 6 fights, his wins were over Kelvin Gastelum, Edmund Shabazi, and Chris Curtis. And those losses were to Jared Cannonier, Marvin Vettori, and Sean Strickland. That goes back to 2019, was when those first 6 fights started. So recently lost a wrestling match to Hamzat Chimaev on Bulldog Fight Night. He's well-rounded. He's probably going to be the more reserved fighter in this fight. He's got good wrestling, but his opponent, Roman, is very dangerous on the ground as well. He was the 2016 ADCC Asia Trials winner. He's 1 inch taller, and he'll also be at a reach disadvantage by 1.5 inches. He's 5-1 inside of the UFC. Won his last 3 fights, including 2 first-round knockouts over Kyle Daukaus and Phil Hawes. And he's probably going to be the more aggressive fighter. And I think he may also have a stand-up advantage, and he's also going to be dangerous on the ground. So I'm going to take Roman Dolidze in this fight. Now Tai Tuivasa against Sergey Pavlovich. Sergey is going to have a 9-inch reach advantage. He's won his last 4 fights, with his last fight being a win over Derek Lewis. Currently 4-1 inside of the UFC, and his only loss was to Alistair Overeem in his debut. He finishes most of his fights. He's an aggressive striker, and he's also finished all 4 of his wins by knockout or TKO inside of the UFC. Now Tai Tuivasa. Tai seems to be at a pretty big disadvantage here. He really prefers to stand and bang. He's 8-4 inside of the UFC, and he's finished a lot of really good guys like Stefan Struve, Augusto Sakai, Greg Hardy, Derek Lewis. He finishes most of his fights, and he's definitely not going to go down without a fight. And he's got a lot of power. My heart's always going with Tai Tuivasa, so I'm going to take him in this fight. He trains at Tiger Muay Thai, so he's definitely getting better between fights. And from the sound of it in the lead up to his last fight, it sounds like he's really hunkering down and getting serious about this. So I'm taking Tai Tuivasa in this fight. And the next fight, Matheus Nicolau against Matt Schnell. Aside from the main event, this is the fight I'm probably looking forward to the most in this card. Nicolau has won his last 5 fights. He's currently 6-1 in the UFC. He came up through the Ultimate Fighter, went 2-1 and then left the UFC, had a short stint outside of it, came back, and now is 3-0 since coming back. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He may just have the ground advantage here. But Matt Schnell is going to be 2 inches taller with a 4-inch reach advantage. He submitted Sumadarji in his last fight. He's 6-5 in the UFC. His last 3 losses were against Brandon Royval, Rogerio Bontorin, and Alexander Pantoja. He's very good at triangles, and he also came through the Ultimate Fighter. But he's not afraid to brawl, and I feel like he's got more grit in him than Matheus Nicolau does. So I'm going to take Matt Schnell in this fight. And now for the co-main event, Bryan Barberena against Rafael dos Anjos. Rafael dos Anjos, he's a seasoned veteran. I don't know why he's coming up to welterweight. He fought his last fight at lightweight. He's literally ranked at lightweight. But he lost his last fight to Rafael Fiziev after beating Renato Moicano. He's currently 3-5 in his last 8 fights, with his losses being to very good opponents, guys like Colby, Kamaru, Leon, pretty much the future of the welterweight division. He's very smart, very technical normally, and he may have the grappling advantage, but his opponent, Bryan Barberena, is 5 inches taller with a 2.5-inch reach advantage. He won his last 3 fights, including wins over Matt Brown and Robbie Lawler. He's 9-6 in the UFC with 4 KOs, 1 sub, and 4 decisions. He's very well-rounded, and he may have the stand-up advantage, especially because he likes to push the pace a lot. And he's absolutely willing to just throw caution to the wind in order to get his opponent. And he's always looking to finish it, even if he has to throw himself into the fire. So I think I'm going to be taking Bryan Barberena, especially because it seems like RDA kind of wants to slow down at this point of his career. As of late, he did ask Dana to not give him the more competitive younger guys and said that he's looking to have fun fights. So I'm going to take Brian Barberena because I think he's probably just going to be out there with more to win for. So we're running with Barberena. Now the main event, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson against Kevin Holland. Stephen Thompson's a UFC veteran. He's lost his last 2 fights to Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns, but he's 3-5 in his last 8 fights. And that goes all the way back to the second fight he had with Tyron Woodley. He only loses to really top-tier competition, and it seems like as of late, he's definitely only losing to guys who are wrestlers. And Stephen Thompson is also the best karate fighter I've ever seen in the octagon, in my opinion. Now, Kevin Holland is 2 inches taller with a 6-inch reach advantage. He lost his last fight to Chimaev and is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, including losses against Marvin Vettori and Derek Brunson. But Kevin Holland also prefers to stand. And I feel like this fight isn't really going to go to the ground, but Kevin Holland has shown improvement with his wrestling. So he may look to attempt to do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was a stand-up fight for the most part. So I expect this main event to be very entertaining. And I think I'm going to go with Kevin Holland. It's like he's not the better striker, but I feel like he's probably going to catch him. I don't know, my gut's just going with Kevin Holland. So that's what I'm going to take in this fight. So to recap, I'm taking Kyle Dawkins, Roman Dolidze, Tai Tuivasa, Matt Schnell, Brian Barberena, and Kevin Holland. And that's all I got for y'all. So I'd like, subscribe, and all that.